Thank you, everybody, for joining with me on this exploration of A Course in Miracles. You're just joining me in my personal practice as we read a section of the text and we practice a lesson together. And then as a bonus, we will take a look at a principle of miracles just so that we can really understand the full function of miracles as intended to be conveyed through the Course. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and I also changed something in the settings for the speaker window. So hopefully the speaker window is in the right place and I have not cut off my own head. All right, so I'm going to click on Read A Course in Miracles, clicking on the text. We are in chapter 19, the attainment of peace. And now we're in section 2, sin versus error. All right, so let's just begin with paragraph 1. It is essential that error be not confused with sin, and it is this distinction that makes salvation possible, for error can be corrected and the wrong made right. But sin, were it possible, would be irreversible. The belief in sin is necessarily based on the firm conviction that minds, not bodies, can attack, and thus the mind is guilty and will forever so remain unless a mind not part of it can give it absolution. Sin calls for punishment as the error for correction, and the belief that punishment is correction is clearly insane. Okay, good. I think that opens us up to a whole other means or way or method of parenting and actually even being with each other, because when the people in our world don't do or say what we want, what we like, what we expect, then an understandable knee-jerk reaction is to punish and withhold. And here we're being shown that punishment is insane. Let's continue. Paragraph 2. Sin is not an error, for sin entails an arrogance which the idea of error lacks. To sin would be to violate reality and to succeed. Sin is the proclamation that attack is real and guilt is justified. It assumes the Son of God is guilty and has thus succeeded in losing his innocence and making himself what God created not. Thus is creation seen as not eternal, and the will of God open to opposition and defeat. Sin is the grand illusion underlying all the ego's grandiosity. For by it, God himself is changed and rendered incomplete. Wowee. So here, the Course is showing us that sin is actually something that is unreal, that it is an illusion that the ego mind, the separated mind, the mind that has separated itself from its original wholeness and innocence, is using as a form of attack. I think we should just continue. So, paragraph 3. The Son of God can be mistaken. He can deceive himself. He can even turn the power of his mind against himself, but he cannot sin. There is nothing he can do that would really change his reality in any way, nor make him really guilty. This is what sin would do, for such is its purpose. Yet, for all the wild insanity inherent in the whole idea of sin, it is impossible. For the wages of sin is death, and how can the immortal die? This is so fascinating because this just turns the whole foundations of religious Christianity on its head, because we're taught from a very early age through the Christian tradition that we are born out of sin. That's one of the first words that we learn when we go to Sunday school. So this might be confronting for some people, or it might be something that needs to just be put on a shelf to be contemplated more deeply at a later date, or just even later today. Let's go back to sharing. Actually, before I continue, I can also feel a freedom in it. And so what I like about that first paragraph is the reference to innocence and the distinction between what error and sin feels like, that an error feels there is an innocence around it, whereas sin feels like it's motivated. And then we're being guided to realize that sin actually is an illusion and impossible. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to share the screen for paragraph 4. A major tenet in the ego's insane religion is that sin is not error, but truth, and it is innocence that would deceive. Purity is seen as arrogance, and the acceptance of the self as sinful is perceived as holiness. And it is this doctrine that replaces the reality of the Son of God as his Father created him and willed that he be forever. Is this humility, or is it rather an attempt to wrest creation away from truth and keep it separate? I think all I want to add here is that we are so used to operating through the lens of guilt and division and derision that we don't even know what it is to be on the other side of it. We're so used to it. If somebody in our world acts in a way that we don't like, that we didn't want, we didn't plan, we have that contracted feeling state, it's natural and normal within our storytelling, within the way that we do things here, to react in a like-minded way, either immediately or over the course of time. And that can include a punishment. But can you see how we get locked into this cycle of punishment? Whereas, what if we chose to see it in a different way? Rather than justifying the guilt and the fear and the anger from our side as real, but rather say, oh, this is an alarm clock actually that's waking me up to the fact that I have just misinterpreted how they have shown up for me. But the bottom line is that we are so used to the ego's deception. According to this, we're so used to the ego's deception to make guilt real. And essentially, this is the whole basis of the course, is to bring a spotlight to where we have that feeling of guilt, the foundational feeling of guilt, born out of the belief in separation that then has created this world. Again, according to the course. All right, I'm going to go back and share the screen. Let's see what happens next. Paragraph 5. Any attempt to reinterpret sin as error is always indefensible to the ego. The idea of sin is wholly sacrosanct to its thought system and quite unapproachable except with reverence and awe. It is the most holy concept in the ego system, lovely and powerful, wholly true, and necessarily protected with every defense at its disposal. For here lies its best defense, which all the others serve. Here is its armor, its protection, and the fundamental purpose of the special relationship in its interpretation. Let's continue with paragraph 6. It can indeed be said that the ego made its world on sin. Only in such a world could everything be upside down, and this is the strange illusion that makes the clouds of guilt seem heavy and impenetrable. The solidness that this world's foundation seems to have is found in this. For sin has changed creation from an idea of God to an ideal the ego wants. A world it rules, made up of bodies, mindless and capable of complete corruption and decay. If this is a mistake, it can be undone easily by truth. Any mistake can be corrected if truth be left to judge it. But if the mistake is given the status of truth, to what can it be brought? The holiness of sin is kept in place by just this strange device. As truth, it is inviolate, and everything is brought to it for judgment. As a mistake, it must be brought to truth. It is impossible to have faith in sin, for sin is faithlessness. Yet it is possible to have faith that a mistake can be corrected. Holy moly. Oh my goodness. How are you doing with this? So, gosh, it's such a paradox, isn't it? Because it feels like that this whole world is essentially born out of our belief then in sin, which is, according to the text, the ego's device to maintain its power. And it can only do that through the device of separation, because without the separation, without the device of separation, there would be nothing to control. There would not be the controller and the controlled, right? And essentially, this is what this world seems to be about, isn't it? It's all about power struggles. All right, let's keep going. Paragraph 7. There is no stone in all the ego's embattled citadel that is more heavily defended than the idea that sin is real, the natural expression of what the Son of God has made himself to be and what he is. To the ego, this is no mistake, for this is its reality. This is the truth from which escape will always be impossible. This is his past, his present, and his future, for he has somehow managed to corrupt his father and change his mind completely. Mourn then the death of God, whom sin has killed. And this would be the ego's wish, which in its madness it believes it has accomplished. And now we can really feel what faithlessness is. It's a total disconnection. It's the perceived total disconnection from the eternal, from our eternal nature, from the original wisdom, from the original love, in which all of this continues to exist. It really is like what water is to fish, guilt and separation. Separation and guilt is to us. And the word that's been attributed to it through the ages, through the storytelling, has been sin, this original sin. Mind-blowing. All right, let's go back now for paragraph 8. Would you not rather that all this be nothing more than a mistake, entirely correctable, and so easily escaped from that its whole correction is like walking through a mist into the sun? For that is all it is. Perhaps you would be tempted to agree with the ego that it is far better to be sinful than mistaken. Yet think you carefully before you allow yourself to make this choice. Approach it not lightly, for it is the choice of hell or heaven. So it seems that that last paragraph is really asking us to be vigilant to the choices that we make moment to moment, and that it's possible to shift our perception by visualizing walking through a mist, the mist being the guilt, the fear, the idea of sin, the grievances, the anger, the frustrations, the desire to punish. All of that is, consider that the fog that we move through, that we walk through to the other side, where there is holy light, holy sunlight. And that the sunlight is a disinfectant, that it cleanses, it illuminates, it reveals, and it warms, it brightens, it gives life, it gives light. So I think that's a fantastic way to finish and incorporate that into your toolbox, that you have a visual. I love using the use of imagination. We can use the imagination as the bridge to shift our perception, to get us closer to the truth. And so, if anything, the takeaway is where we do have power is when in any given moment we can choose peace over grievance. that we can choose to be in a dream, not a nightmare. And this is how we begin collectively to bring heaven here on earth. We're being told that, what do you want to choose, heaven or hell? And it seems to be too that what this is pointing to, without really saying it, is that through the ego's world that it has created a form of hell. But we're also being shown how there is a possibility to turn it into heaven, that heaven is also right here. They're side by side. It sounds like that's the paradox. All right, so let's now go to our lesson. So we're clicking on the home button to now go to the workbook for students, and we are in lesson 25. And I'll have the narrator read it for us.
Lesson 25. I do not know what anything is for. Purpose is meaning. Today's idea explains why nothing you see means anything. You do not know what it is for. Therefore, it is meaningless to you. Everything is for your own best interests. That is what it is for. That is its purpose. That is what it means. It is in recognizing this that your goals become unified. It is in recognizing this that what you see is given meaning. You perceive the world and everything in it as meaningful in terms of ego goals. These goals have nothing to do with your own best interests, because the ego is not you. This false identification makes you incapable of understanding what anything is for. As a result, you are bound to misuse it. When you believe this, you will try to withdraw the goals you have assigned to the world instead of attempting to reinforce them. Another way of describing the goals you now perceive is to say that they are all concerned with personal interests. Since you have no personal interest, your goals are really concerned with nothing. In cherishing them, therefore, you have no goals at all, and thus you do not know what anything is for. Before you can make any sense out of the exercises for today, one more thought is necessary. At the most superficial levels, you do recognize purpose. Yet purpose cannot be understood at these levels. For example, you do understand that a telephone is for the purpose of talking to someone who is not physically in your immediate vicinity. What you do not understand is what you want to reach him for. And it is this that makes your contact with him meaningful or not. It is crucial to your learning to be willing to give up the goals you have established for everything. The recognition that they are meaningless rather than good or bad is the only way to accomplish this. The idea for today is a step in this direction. 6 practice periods, each of 2 minutes duration, are required. Each practice period should begin with a slow repetition of the idea for today, followed by looking about you and letting your glance rest on whatever happens to catch your eye, near or far, important or unimportant, human or non-human. With your eyes resting on each subject you so select, say, for example, I do not know what this chair is for. I do not know what this pencil is for. I do not know what this hand is for. Say this quite slowly, without shifting your eyes from the subject until you have completed the statement about it. Then move on to the next subject and apply today's idea as before.
Okay, so the idea for today is I do not know what anything is for. And we're being reminded that the the only thing that we need to keep in mind is that somehow, even if we don't understand it, which we don't, that everything is for us, actually. Everything is for me. And so the practice period is 2 minutes, 5 times for the day, as many days as you wish to practice this lesson. And the task is to just start to look around the room, letting your eyes land on whatever object is near or far, important or unimportant, and repeat to yourself, I do not know what this blank is for. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again. And as always, just settle into this now moment, aware that you're here, that you are supported, that everything is conspiring to support you actually, and that you have everything you need to exist in this moment. All right, so I'm going to go ahead now and start our 2 minute timer. And so just start looking around. I do not know what this glass is for. Okay, that's our timer. So how was that for you? 2 minutes is different, isn't it? You sink more quickly into that meditative state, I notice. Okay, so let's go back to sharing the screen now, and we're going to look at our principle of miracles. We click on the text, chapter 1, the meaning of miracles, and section 1, principles of miracles. And we are at principle 43. Miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind or a state of miracle readiness. Okay, and that's essentially what we're doing, isn't it? So, as I've said before, I think it's a wonderful idea to screenshot the principle just to refer to it throughout the day, just bring it to mind and contemplating what is miracle readiness. And so there's a perfect segue to say that please join a mindfulness-based meditation class. I hold them every month on the third Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m., whether online or in person. Go to the alilacenter.org website, click on the calendar, and the registration links are there. And then on the fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern, both classes 7 p.m. Eastern, I facilitate an natural healing self-help, both of which are creating the conditions for miracle-minded readiness. All right, wonderful. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Uru for now.